Well, tonight we're supposed to talk about the Erlbachers and the Mississippi. We're glad are here on a nice, pleasant summer evening with some rain. But we're going to talk about life on the river. In life, there's some things that just naturally go together. Peaches and cream, bacon and eggs, Mutt and Jeff, Adam and Eve, Martin and Lewis, Bert and Mary Ann, Sharon and Out of the Past, and Houck and Elmwood. There are just a lot of combinations that we can use. And in this region, it's the Erlbachers and the Mississippi. No family has a longer relationship with the river than the Erlbacher family. And tonight, Rob is going to talk about the Erlbacher family and the Mississippi River. To my knowledge, there's never been a presentation in Cape Girardeau about this vital relationship. I don't think anyone has ever focused on that. It's now almost a century long. In some ways, it might be considered longer than a century. It was in the 1920s and 30s that Robert and Eddie Erlbacher watched and learned from their father how to work with various metals in a small foundry on the banks of the Mississippi, just north of where we're seated tonight. Without formal education or professional experience, these three bright people learned and grew and became highly skilled. Here on the banks of the largest river in the continent, they were obviously called on many occasions to make repairs to the countless boats that moved up and down the river. In the 1930s, one of them probably said to the others while working on something broken, or something that needed repairs, he must have said to the others, "Hey, come over here and look at this. Hell, we can build a better boat than this." And so they did. From the 1930s to almost yesterday, they organized their boat building into the Erlbacher Brothers barge lines. Following the end of World War II, they established the Missouri Barge Line Corporation, making a number of highly successful riverboats, establishing the Missouri Dry Dock Corporation in 1954, inventing a propeller repair process that you can see the culmination of on the floor over here after this presentation. Building a second dry dock, and significantly bringing in Mabel and Ann, when few riverboat companies had the wisdom or courage to bring women into their work. This long legacy came to an end when in 2008 the family sold Missouri Barge Line with its riverboats, harbor boats, barges, and service agreements. In 2019, the close relationship between the Erlbacher family and the Great River essentially came to an end. There's still activities, they're still involved, and Rob's going to tell you how they're still connected to the river. But tonight we'll have the first chance to hear from Rob Erlbacher, Robert Erlbacher II, or Rob. And he will tell us about the legacy and the significant connections between the Erlbacher family and the Mississippi, the longest family connection in this region of those two forces. So I'm really pleased to present to you, first time in Cape Girardeau, talking about the river to a public audience, Rob Erlbacher.
Hope I can live up to that. Thank you all for being here. hearing this story. You guys must be bored at home to come out and listen to this. Anyway, my dad and his brother, Eddie, Jerry is here, came in. Jerry, you're here. Where you at, Jerry? Right there. Jerry is son of Eddie Erlbacher. And Jerry is, just to make it clear, is 10 years older than I am. Which means that he has some history there that I don't have. And so I'm going to start this talk in the 1930s, and I wasn't born until 46. So I'm speaking of things that only have been told to me, and some of that's not good memory. But as Frank was saying, that my dad and his brother Eddie grew up. Their dad had a foundry and a machine shop just 2 blocks north of here on Main Street on the east, on the west side. Used to be your building, Jim. Red Letter. That lot used to be where that foundry was. As a kid, and I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, they grew up in that foundry machine shop atmosphere. They get out of school. To make it clear, my dad was in high school, and somewhere around his sophomore or junior year, I don't know for sure, he quit school. And he went out and got a job with a company that was building a road that went west of Jackson. I don't know the numbers, at 25 or something like that. He was helped building that road, and his job was taking a shovel and filling up a dump truck. That's what he did to help build a road. And I think from that he decided he needed to go back to school. So he went back to school, finished high school, and then there's all these years that I don't really know what all went on, and Jerry might be able to, Jerry, if I say something wrong or you need to correct me or add to, please do. But into the 30s, somehow or another, they decided they wanted to get in the river business. They would be Eddie and my dad, Robert. Don't know why they decided to do it. Never heard that part of the story. Jerry, do you have a clue on that? No. Okay, Jerry doesn't have a clue either, so we're clueless. Where they've got the skill to do that, Frank talked a little bit about that. I don't know. I don't know where this brain power came from. But in the 30s, early 30s, they started building a boat. The first boat they built was the John Hall, which was a nephew of those 2 brothers. They had a sister, her name was Lynn, and she had a son, John Hall, which coincidentally ended up working for my father at Missouri Dry Dock, and I can remember Johnny Hall working down there a whole lot. But that was the name of that first boat, the John Hall. Now these were not anywhere, the boats that you see going up and down the river now, those boats in the 30s did not look like what you see out there now. These boats were probably 50, 60, probably 60 feet long in those early 30 years. Might have had 1 engine, might have had 2 engines, and might have had a total horsepower of maybe 400 or 500 horsepower. The big boats that go up and down the river today are anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 horsepower. So those were small boats. But they built, and somewhere around here it shows the numbers of those boats that they built and the sequence that they built them in. I don't remember that. I can just remember a few of the names. But there was about, in those 1930s, they probably built 5 or 6 or 7 boats. And who they worked for, I think I can remember somebody saying, Donna Rushing, I think Woody Rushing said they might have been working for Massman Construction on some of those years, which I think Woody worked for, is that right? Donna Rushing is part of the family that's going to be talked about later here. So they got jobs on the river, moving this, that, or the other somewhere, and I don't know where. My dad was kind of he would be out on the boats, operating the boats, being a pilot, and didn't have to have a license in those days. You got the skill, you just did it. But he did that, and Eddie he would stay back and kind of run the office and find jobs, and that went on through the 1930s.